Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Charlotte Kelshiker, and I'm talking to you this afternoon, or maybe it's your morning, or maybe it's your evening, but it's my afternoon, from Oxford Said. What I'd like to do, first of all, is to find out whether you can hear me before I get stuck into this slide deck. So if you can give me a little bit of feedback. Yeah, Sam has told me that she can see and hear me fine. Thanks very much for that, Sam. So without further ado, let's get things underway. My first task this afternoon is to let you know who else is in the room with me. So I'm joined by my colleague, Liam Kilby. Liam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us. If you've been on any of our webinars over the last few weeks, my voice probably will not be a stranger to you, so thank you for joining us again.
And as I said, my name is Charlotte Kelshiker, and I'm one of the Senior Advisors in Recruitment and Admissions here at Oxford Said. It's my task this afternoon to take you through a little bit of the background information around our MBA 1+1 programme, but also talk you through the mechanics of how one would submit an application to this incredible two-year programme. I thought we'd start this afternoon with a quote from our Dean. I'm sure you can all read this for yourself, but this speaks to me not only what we offer in the MBA, but it's particularly pertinent when it comes to the 1+1 programme, because it is a two-year experience, and we really are looking for candidates who want to undertake the 1+1 because they genuinely want to change the world and make it a better place. So what is the 1+1? I'm sure that you have all done your homework already. You probably know quite a lot about the 1+1 programme and Oxford University Business School and our place within that setting. But just to recap for you, the 1+1 is a two-year experience here at Oxford. And during those 2 years, you will acquire 2 degrees from Oxford University. Now, this confers a number of benefits. It gives you an additional year to effect a career transition if you are looking to change the trajectory or sector of your career that you've built to date, or perhaps you're looking to start something completely new. Maybe that's on your own, or maybe that's part of a startup endeavour, but it gives you extra time to do that than just a traditional one-year MBA experience would. But by undertaking the Oxford 1+1, it's still more cost effective than doing a two-year MBA at some other universities. And a huge benefit of applying to the 1+1 and being accepted is that you have the opportunity to be considered for a Pershing Square Scholarship, which is an extremely prestigious award that just 5 of our 1+1 community receive each year. So let's just look at some of the differences between year 1 and year 2. So year 1 of the 1+1 experience is where you will undertake a really academic deep dive into your chosen specialist subject. You will undertake a 1-year taught master's degree. Now that could be a MSc, a Master of Science, or it could be a Master of Studies, depending on the programme that you choose from the list of options. But it really does give you that very specialist experience that will last either 12 or 9 months, depending on the programme that you choose. And you will be taught in a class that is quite small compared to a traditional MBA type environment. So you could find yourself in a cohort of maybe 15 people only who are truly some of the eminent scholars in that particular field. But during that first year, whilst you're not taught here at the business school, you very definitely are a member of our community. So during your first year, you might be studying at the Department of Geography and the Environment, or maybe at Education, or the Faculty of Law, or History. But we will still very much view you as and welcome you as a member of our community here at the business school. For example, you'll be able to start your post-Oxford career planning from the get-go. We will put you in touch with our careers development team. We will put you in touch with mentors here at the school. We'll make sure that you are invited to relevant events and opportunities here at the school, such as networking, evenings or guest speaker programs throughout your first 9 or 12 months. even before you start to study for the MBA. So in your second year at Oxford, you then join the MBA class of that year. So you will go from a very focused academic deep dive, a very specialist curriculum, into the breadth of the MBA and everything that that offers in terms of a broad-based business education. We will offer you in that second year the broad-based curriculum of core subjects that we teach, plus the opportunity for you to start to tailor your MBA experience via the electives that might seem most relevant to you, that you will choose to study in your second and third terms. And whereas your first year is going to be a very academic experience, full of academic rigor and research, your MBA year gives you lots of opportunities to enjoy applied learning. So we take a lot of the theories out of the classroom in the MBA and give you opportunities to work either on your own or as a member of a team to really apply some of those theories in very practical learning scenarios. And then at the end of that 2-year period, you are in pole position to really launch your post-Oxford career goal. So let's have a quick look at some of the partnering departments. We've got a photo here as well of the MBA 1+1 cohort a couple of years ago, with us for 2 years, and some students here were drawn from really diverse corners of the wider university, coming from the Blavatnik School, the Department of Computer Science, Law Faculty, the Internet Institutes, Department of Social Policy and Social Intervention, and, as I mentioned earlier, Geography and the Environment. So we look to partner with academic departments where we feel that there are great synergies, not only in terms of curriculum, but that clearly students will be attracted to study these particular subjects because they play very well into that world-changing ambition. For example, a couple of years ago, one of our 1+1 students came to us from a background working in a not-for-profit in sub-Saharan Africa, where she was running an organization to bring clean water to marginalized people that didn't have access to those resources. And she came to us very much from a background in pure engineering, so real hands-on nuts and bolts engineering. And she decided to study for an MBA 1+1, partnering her MBA with a degree taught at the School of Geography and the Environment around water policy and management. So you can see that given her ambition and given her academic background to date, those two programs really helped her move in the right direction to launch that endeavour after her MBA, which she did very successfully. Another great example, a candidate, again, a few years ago now, he undertook his 1+1 at the Department of Education, looking at child development specifically, followed by his MBA, and he's now head of new ventures and learning experiences at the Lego Foundation. So learning about children and how they acquire knowledge and how they learn through play, coupled with the business focus of the MBA, took him to the Lego Foundation. Here's a list, and I do not intend to read this to you. You can read this for yourself. But it just shows you the breadth of the different kind of taught masters programs that one could potentially choose from when it comes to the MBA 1+1 portfolio. So as we see here, we've got everything there from modern languages through to computer science and lots of other interesting subjects in between. What you will potentially be asking is, well, I want to do a different master's program. Can I partner that with the 1+1? The 1+1 is a program that's been developed by the university quite centrally. And these academic departments have opted to be part of the MBA 1+1 and to partner with the business school in this very explicit way. So if your master's degree that you're tempted towards is not on this list, that's probably because that particular academic department has not wanted to partner in the MBA 1+1 program to date. So unfortunately, whilst you'd be more than welcome to make the two applications, it wouldn't really be taking place within the 1+1 wrapper. And also, just to clarify, the 1+1 is named because it is 1 year followed by 1 year. Therefore, it's not a 4-year DPhil followed by 1 year or a 2-year MPhil, followed by 1 year. It is very much a 1+1. So let's turn our attention now to the MBA side of things. I thought I'd talk through what we look for when it comes to application requirements for the MBA programme. First and foremost, your undergraduate degree is important, but the subject that you've studied is not particularly important. So the MBA community here at Oxford Saïd is really very diverse. We welcome candidates from all kinds of academic backgrounds, whether you've read for an undergraduate degree in history or music, or something that you might think of when you think about business schools, such as economics or business administration. That's fine, providing you've graduated with the international equivalent of a UK upper second class honours, or 2-1. So that would be around about 3.5 out of a 4-point scale in the US, for example. Then we'd welcome your application. And what we would want to see from you when you apply are your degree transcripts. So we would expect you to upload your transcripts as part of your application. And those show us all of your marks across the duration of your study. So we can see exactly how you performed in all of your topics and modules that you studied during your degree. The next element that's absolutely mandatory for any applications to the MBA is either a GRE or GMAT score. So all candidates are required to submit one of these test results at the point of application, irrespective of your educational or professional background. The GMAT or GRE gives us a pretty good indication of how you're likely to cope with the programme material of the MBA, because this kind of test measures your competence in a number of different ways. It looks at your ability to reason, to articulate yourself. It tests how numerate you are in terms of your quantitative skills. You need to have taken one of these tests within 5 years before applying to the MBA. And we ask you when you apply to provide us with your test scores and also to upload your test score report. And please make sure that Oxford Saïd is one of the institutions that you want to share your official scores with. I think you can name up to 5 universities in your test takers account, so make sure that Oxford Saïd is one of them. Video assessment I will just mention briefly, but come back to on the next slide. So the next thing that I would like to talk about in terms of our requirements is your work experience or your CV. You need to apply to the 1+1 MBA at least 2 years full-time work experience. And we ask you to demonstrate this by uploading a 1-page CV that gives us insight into your background. Again, much like your academic background, we're not particularly bothered what sector you've worked in before. We just need to make sure that if you do come to class, you have plenty of real life experience to bring to the party, some real world examples rather than just theoretical knowledge of how the world of business works. You'll also have to register 2 people to act as referees in support of your MBA application. Now, for those of you who have been out of academia for many years and are possibly not in touch with faculty who taught you, clearly an academic reference doesn't make great sense. So you might want to consider registering 2 people to act as professional referees in support of your application. These should be people who really know you well, know your strengths, know your areas for development. They've had a long relationship with you. They understand why you want to undertake an MBA at Oxford, and importantly, can give us some real examples of how you use your skills, your knowledge, your leadership potential in a workplace context. We're not particularly bothered by someone's job title. So you might ask someone super senior and super impressive to be your referee, but if they don't really know you, they'll have very little to say to us. And that will, unfortunately, not support your application particularly well. So think quite carefully about who to ask to act as your referees. I would also recommend that you ask them whether they are willing to be your referee, because of course this does require quite a bit of time on their behalf too. They'll receive a link from us as soon as you register them on the application system, and they will then need to be ready to dedicate some time to answering a few questions about you and also crafting a letter of recommendation and uploading that. So make sure that they're ready, willing, and able to do all of that by the application deadline that you're targeting. You will also need to upload supporting essays. Now, if you're just applying to the MBA, there's just one essay to upload. But if you are applying to the 1+1, there's more than one essay. One essay asks you what else you would like the admissions committee to know about you that isn't covered somewhere else in your application. So you can think quite carefully about how to use that. You could use that to address a weakness in your overall profile. You could use that to tell us more about what you like to do when you're not working. It could be something that you like to do in your free time, or maybe even on a voluntary basis that you think we will find super interesting and it will make us want to know you better. In other words, we might then want to invite you for an interview. But for the 1+1, you'll find that there is an additional essay that we ask you to write, which is really setting out your stall in terms of how the 1+1 is going to help you to change the world, why the 1+1 is so critical to your individual personal mission. So we need to hear a coherent argument that makes sense to us, why you really need both of those programs in order to execute that vision. Now, last but not least on this page, English language proficiency. This is certainly not going to be relevant to everybody listening, but for some of you it will be. And I guess the first qualifying question is, when you did your undergraduate degree or your master's degree, if you've already got one, was it taught entirely in English? If it was, you will not need to upload the results of an English language test. Okay, we will waive that requirement. What we will ask you to do, though, is to prove to us that that degree was taught entirely in English. There's really two ways that you can do that. Have a look at your degree transcript, and it will say somewhere on it the medium of instruction. Or potentially, if you look at your transcript and it doesn't say that anywhere, talk to your university and they will be able to very easily provide you with a standard letter that confirms the medium of instruction for your particular degree, and you can upload that. For those of you who have not done a degree that was taught entirely in English, you may well need, therefore, to submit test results. Now, the tests that we accept, they are explained in great granular detail on our website, so I won't go into the minutiae right now, but suffice to say we accept the internet-based TOEFL test, the IELTS, and the Cambridge test of proficiency in English. And if you do look at our website and look at the minimum scores, you need to meet those minimum scores, okay? That requirement is set by the University of Oxford, so we at Oxford Said, as an academic department, we have to fall in line with that and support that requirement. So you absolutely need to be able to hit those test results. And you also need a test result that was achieved within the last 2 years. So please provide your results. Please upload your copy of your test certificate so we can see the test date and we can see how you performed. Right, now more about those video assessments that I mentioned earlier. So when you submit your application to the MBA, you will arrive at a landing page, and on that landing page you'll be able to upload your transcript. You'll be able to upload your test results, so things like your GMAT or your TOEFL, as we've just been discussing. But really importantly, you will be able to see a link to our video assessment platform. If you hop onto that platform and register yourself, you will be able to start to get familiar with the kind of questions that we would like you to answer by video link. Now, don't worry, this is not replacing an interview or anything like this. This is just supplementary information, and it's a way for you to showcase yourself to us, and it's a way for us to meet you rather than just read about you off the page. And whereas with an essay, that's something that you can write and rewrite and rewrite get people to read and give you feedback and polish and refine. Doing a video question really gives us the chance to meet the authentic you and see how you think on your feet. But don't worry, first thing we do is give you loads of time to practice. There's a bank of practice questions and you can practice as much as you like. So you'll, for example, be able to get used to seeing yourself, hearing yourself by undergoing those practice questions over and over. But there will come a point where you need to do a live take of some real video interview questions. Now, those questions, first thing to say, don't worry, because if you're applying to an MBA program anywhere, chances are the business schools that you're applying to are likely to be using technology like this. Very widely used in the business school community, but also increasingly more common with employers these days. So it's certainly something you do need to get used to. But let's say you're ready, practice questions out of the way. The real questions break down as follow. There's going to be a couple of questions around your motivation for wanting to do an MBA. Now, these should be very, very predictable. You know you want an MBA, you know that you are pretty keen on coming to Oxford to do it. So you should be in a position to answer these questions pretty easily and quite convincingly. The other two questions that we ask you to answer are completely randomized. One will give you the opportunity to draw on some real life examples. And the question might go something like, tell me about a time when you had to work with a particularly difficult stakeholder in a project. What happened? What approach did you take? What was the outcome? What did you learn from it? So this is the kind of question that gets you to perhaps reflect on your past, on your professional experience, and tell us about that. And the other type of question that we pose to you is going to be much more hypothetical. So it will ask you to imagine yourself in a particular scenario, and we will then say to you, okay, so if that happened, what would you do? And why would you take that particular approach? So as I said earlier, it gives us a chance into what really makes you tick and how well you think on your feet. Now, there will be a written question also on this platform. The question for the written piece, it really just tests how quickly and fluently you can write in English. It's a very, very short piece. It's against the clock, but the question is fun. It's really light-hearted. It's not about the MBA. They're not particularly sort of serious questions, as it were. So it's much more about you being able to type a fluent and coherent piece of English against the clock. But what I would say is don't worry about this part of the application. It is extremely common, but it gives us great insight. It's really for you an opportunity for you to tell us more about your experience and show us how well you think. Okay, so here's a little infographic here showing you the pathway as to how you would apply to the Oxford 1+1. As you can see, you need to make 2 applications. You can make these literally at the same time, but you certainly need to make sure that you make them by relevant application deadlines. Now, if we think first of all about your preferred masters, first thing you need to do is to browse that list of programs that I showed earlier and cross-reference that list with the more detailed information that you'll find in the Graduate Studies Prospectus on Oxford University's website. You will also find links from our website. There's a menu of partner programs that takes you through to the correct prospectus entry on the university's website. So take your time to think about the MSc or the MST that's right for you and check the admissions requirement for that particular program, because it will certainly be very, very different to the requirements that I've just described with regards to the MBA element of your application. For example, you're probably going to need to register 3 academic referees for your MSc application. Being a very academically focused program, they're going to be less interested in professional references and really want to understand your academic prowess. You will probably need to submit samples of previous academic work that can showcase your ability in that particular sphere. And you may find that the entry criteria for that program requires you to have studied that subject at undergraduate level and graduated with a degree that has been scored at a particular level too. So for example, you may find you need to have achieved first class honours in that subject in order to read for a master's degree in that subject at Oxford as part of the 1+1. So do your research, do your homework, and start to understand that the admissions requirements between the MSc programme and the MBA will be very different. The application deadlines will also potentially be different. You may find that your MSc programme of choice only has one application deadline a year. So you're going to need to make sure that you absolutely hit that and that that application is complete on time. Because unlike the MBA, there will probably not be a further application stage that you can be considered under. So let's say you find your master's degree, you meet all the admissions requirements, you put your application together and you hit submit on your MSc application. That will be considered by a panel of academics at that particular department, quite separately from your MBA application. So concurrently, you will be completing your Oxford MBA application, thinking about the requirements that I've just talked you through. You'll be pulling all of your materials together for that. You'll be submitting your MBA application. Again, completely different deadline, completely different application system. And we here at the business school will be looking at that application when it's submitted, and we will be making our decision about whether to take your application forward. It's worth mentioning that one of the differences is that for the MBA application, we would never admit anyone to the programme without interviewing them. But for some of the other partnering departments, that's not necessarily true. Some departments do not generally interview. They will literally go from the application materials that they receive, and they will be looking at, for example, your academic background, samples of your previous academic work in order to arrive at a decision about your application. So you may find that you're interviewed by both departments, or you may find that you're only interviewed by the business school if we shortlist you for interview. So I guess the ideal outcome here is that both of your applications are successful and you end up with two offers. You end up with an offer from your master's department, and you also end up with an offer from us here at Oxford Said. That makes you a proper 1+1 student. And at that point, we would give you a joint offer of admission to Oxford University, and we would automatically defer your entry to the MBA programme by 1 year, giving you the first year in which to complete your MSc programme. So here's a link. I know that our website already provides links to the wider university website where you can find out more about those master's programs, read the prospectus. Perhaps you'd want to reach out to the other academic departments, perhaps chat about your background. There might be something in their application requirements that isn't particularly clear to you, but your best conduit to finding all of that information is here on the screen. So it's Oxford University's main homepage /graduate. And as I've already alluded to, the MSc and MST deadlines will differ to the MBA application deadlines. The wider university tends to use application deadlines that fall in November, in January, and in March, but they do not necessarily use all three. So each academic department decides how many deadlines it wants to operate under. Whereas here in MBA land, we have 3 application deadlines that are pertinent to you thinking about the 1+1 programme. 6th of September, that's our stage 1, which we're currently halfway through, so we're busy interviewing candidates this very week. The next deadline for the MBA part of your application is the 1st of November, and the 3rd application deadline is the 10th of January. So that's certainly when we expect to receive the majority of applications, and that does fall in line with the wider university application deadlines for some of those MSc and MST programmes. For those of you who are already familiar with the MBA programme and how you would apply, you might be thinking, well, why hasn't she mentioned stage 4, which is the application deadline that falls in April? A couple of reasons for that. First reason is that the April deadline for the MBAs is extremely competitive, and by then we're frequently operating a waitlist. So if you are wanting to study for the 1+1, you are wanting to know that you've definitely got a seat in the MBA programme in order to be a 1+1 student. And the next slide will explore for you another great reason to make sure that you apply before the stage 4 deadline. And that is because if you apply in stages 1, 2, or 3, and providing you receive an offer of admission to the MBA plus your partner programme, you can be considered for the Pershing Square Scholarship. As I mentioned earlier, this is a particularly illustrious scholarship, very much run along the lines of the Rhodes Scholarship. In other words, it fully funds both of your programmes of study while you're here at Oxford. So it would cover the course fee for your chosen partner MSc programme in year 1, and it would cover your entire MBA course fee in year 2, along with a generous living expenses allowance for both of those years. So not only is it generous, but it also offers you membership of a very small and exclusive community in terms of mentorship and activities built around the MBA experience here at Oxford. So there's treks, for example, to New York, where you would meet with and be mentored by leaders in the Pershing Square Foundation and more widely across the collegiate university, and also access to a phenomenally impressive alumni network. So how do you get yourself considered for Pershing Square? So as I already said, you need to apply for your MSc programme and the MBA by that January deadline. You need to make sure you get offers of admission to both programmes. You need to provide your 1+1 essays when you are completing your MBA application. And there is a supplementary essay that's specifically for Pershing Square. So when you're completing your MBA application, go to the funding section and you will see there that there is an extra essay for you to answer, which really asks you how you're going to change the world. So a nice open essay title for you to really paint a picture of that inspiring vision for us, and then we will really understand how the 1+1 is invaluable to helping you make this a reality. And what we're really looking for here is leadership potential. Now that needs to be demonstrated through your experience. We need to see a clear motivation to succeed and lead, coupled with high academic achievement in your backstory. So in your bachelor's degree, perhaps in your GMAT, GRE, or it could be in a master's degree or any other postgraduate qualification that you've already undertaken and passed. We're looking for people here with a really strong story to tell, with real focus, integrity, and commitment to deliver change for good. Now, you probably know that our mission here at the school really is built around seeing business as a force for good, whether we are delivering that through social impact work or work on social justice or inclusion, or it could just be the way that one undertakes one's work, maybe working for a major multinational corporation. There is still the opportunity there to genuinely deliver good and positive change. And we're wanting to see in you a focus, an intention, and a commitment to tackling those world-scale problems that face us at a planetary level. And we want to understand how you want to engage with that challenge and make a change for the better. So as we say here, a real desire to achieve scalable and sustainable solutions to some of those challenges. So as well as potentially being a Pershing Scholar, one thing you will definitely be is a member of an Oxford college, and you will be thriving here. There's just some photographic evidence there. When you think about Oxford, this is probably what you think of. The medieval heart of the city. You can see there the Radcliffe camera sitting proud, and in the foreground you've got the beauty of All Souls in the background there, Exeter College. I can see Brasenose, I can see the Bodleian Library, I can see the Sheldonian Theatre where you would matriculate and graduate, and you would be a part of this community for 2 whole years as part of our MBA community. You'd have to be a member of an Oxford college. You would normally be a member of the same college for both years of your 1+1 experience. And through that, it really confers on you the opportunity to meet with people who are not like you. And that, I think, is where a lot of the magic happens at Oxford. So in your first year, in your academic deep dive, you would potentially be in a small cohort, a small class of specialists studying a fairly narrow subject to great intensity, a great sort of specialist focus, if you will. And then in your MBA year, here you are at the business school, surrounded by people that are all about business and leadership and management and change. But in your college community, that's where you'll be rubbing shoulders with postgraduate researchers, maybe with undergraduate students fresh out of school, just maybe starting a degree in medicine or philosophy, something completely different. And that's where you'll be developing super interesting relationships across the piece with people who, on the face of it, you might not think have much to teach you, but you'd be surprised how much you have to teach each other. And at your college, of course, within that setting, you often picture yourself sitting perhaps at a formal dinner. Formal dinners happen frequently in college and often attended by guest speakers. There's always a great guest speaker program, both at college level, at academic department level, certainly here at the school as well. We have an amazing range of distinguished speakers who come and speak to our community. Through your college, you would also be involved in balls, bops, and other social and fun activities, all kinds of societies and clubs that you can join, sports for you to either keep going with if that's something that's a really important part of your life and really helps with your work-life balance, if there's a sport you're particularly passionate about, or if you just want to try something out for new, then your college is often the conduit to exploring those opportunities. And you would also become a member of the Oxford Union, and certainly part of your MBA course fee covers Oxford Union membership for life. So that gives you the opportunity to attend those great debates. So if you think that you might have what it takes to be an Oxford 1+1 student, this is what you need to do next. If you haven't already done so, download our brochure online. Also, start to think about your GMAT or GRE. If you haven't already taken this test, it's worth investing time. This does form a pretty important part of your MBA application. I know it's only one data point in terms of your overall profile, but these tests really do give us a pretty good indication as to how you're likely to cope with course content. And we'd normally recommend at least 100 hours of study, probably spread out over 2 or 3 months to put yourself in a good position to take one of these tests and be satisfied with the kind of result that you're likely to achieve and aim for. You need to start to do your research also around your partner program. The 1+1 is not for everyone. It's not necessarily a case of just finding a course that you think sounds all right. You need to be passionate about that academic subject, and you very well might need an academic background in that subject to read for your chosen MSc. So think carefully about whether there really is a partner program there for you, and if there is, have a look at the background, have a look at the requirements, maybe reach out to that academic department and make sure that you're putting yourself in a good position to be a strong candidate for that program as well as for the MBA. Now, certainly here at Oxford side, we do run frequent open days. We have one coming up next Friday, the 18th of October. So we run an open day every couple of months. And across the wider university, you will find that other academic departments run their own open days. So have a look on their events pages and see what might be coming up for you to go and visit other departments that have maybe caught your eye and caught your interest. And that will give you the opportunity to not only speak to admissions folk there, but maybe meet some of their current students also. And last but not least, start your application. Or what it should really say here, my apologies, is start your applications, plural. Your application to your chosen MSc and your application to the MBA. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please get busy typing them into the dialog box. I should have said this at the beginning of the broadcast, my apologies. We have the question box there. You start typing away. We are going to get through as many questions as we can this afternoon. Liam is sitting here, ready, agog, ready to start talking to you and giving answers to questions. So if we have any questions there that we can answer. Let's see what we've got. Here we are, right. Okay, great question here. Median GRE scores and also median GMAT scores. Liam, what would be a competitive score in either of those tests for the MBA part of the application?
So thank you for the question. GMAT score, you'll find a median on our brochure, on our class profile. The median for this year's class is around 680. A competitive score in terms of what we look for on the website is around 650. That on the GRE side is something around a 160 in the verbal side and a 161 in the quant. That will give you an equivalent of a 650 on the GMAT, and that's what you should be aiming for to be competitive. Now, please bear in mind, as Charlotte said, it's just one of those data points we use when considering your application. And so if you're sat there thinking, well, I've done the GMAT, I've done the GRE already, maybe even a couple of times, and you're struggling to maybe hit that score that we're looking for in terms of levels of competitiveness, then you will have other strengths in your application, maybe your work experience, maybe your undergraduate degree, maybe a very strong essay. Please don't worry. Please don't think that you cannot submit your application because you do not meet that minimum criteria. But they're the numbers you should be aiming for to be competitive.
Thank you very much, Liam. Now, good question here. Can you apply to 2 partnering programs?
I mean, in theory, yes, you can. What I would suggest you think about really is, why are you looking at multiple partner programs? Not that that necessarily is a bad thing, but as Charlotte has very eloquently described in the webinar today, this should all be adding up together to form a strategy about your future career. And those partner programs, as you've seen from the list of partner departments, can be quite varied and different from each other. So if you're thinking of maybe going for something in terms of Masters of Public Policy as one option, or then Social Science of the Internet as maybe another option, then there probably are some overlaps that we can see some sense and some logic in as to why you might be interested in both. But to pick 2 very contrasting things off the top of my head, for example, music theory versus public policy, that might be a little bit of a disparate application. And we might ask some questions as to why you are opening yourself up to a number of different opportunities. So in theory, yes, but just have a think about how that might come across to the admissions department.
Question here about references. Could there be an overlap in referees? So I guess what this person is wondering is, could I register the same referees to support my master's application that I'm registering to support my MBA application?
Yes, you can. Again, just a note of caution here. That reference request will be different in terms of what we look for here at the business school versus what the department that runs your master's degree will look for when they seek the reference. Sometimes the referees that we use are very busy people, and so please bear in mind that you need to manage their expectations in terms of the workload you're about to drop on their doorstep. If you're asking them to do both referees, it might happen at different times of year, depending on when you're looking to make both of your applications. It could be a month worth of work for one application, and then straight away a second month in the second application, and so all of a sudden you're taking up 2 months of their time. So have those conversations. If you feel very strongly that this is the right person to use for both, just make sure that they understand, that the requirement that you're asking of them. But yes, you can.
Question here about outcomes. Now, I'm conscious that when we were looking at the flowchart earlier, it was all about the ideal outcome, which is getting an offer of admission from your partner program and an offer of admission to the MBA. But what happens if you're perhaps successful with one application but unsuccessful and maybe rejected by the other? What happens then?
It's a very sensible question. Hopefully we will not have to cross this bridge, but if you do, there are a number of options that are open to you. So let's assume in our scenario you've applied to both, you've been successful with your first year, your application to the master's degree in the wider university, but you've been unsuccessful at the MBA. Now, in theory, you can join your MSc or MSc, and while you're on course in that first year, you can reapply to the MBA and then join us as soon as your master's degree has finished, like you would have anyway if you'd been successful in both of your applications. There is a chance, although we probably won't promise this to any level of degree, that you may be considered, if you're successful for the MBA this time, for potentially half of a Pershing Square Scholarship if you meet the criteria. That has happened relatively often in the past, but that is an option to you. If you get into the MBA but you don't get into the master's degree, now you then suddenly have a year to fill with something before you would have joined the MBA. And so we will offer to bring your MBA forward by a year so that you don't have to then just either stay and work or find another program to do while you wait to join the MBA. So you can start your MBA 1 year sooner than you had planned if you don't get into the master's degree.
Thanks, Liam. One thing I'd just add to that, occasionally it has been known that we have admitted someone to the MBA program, so that application has gone quite well, but we have set a condition of admission that that person also receives an offer of admission to their master's program. So usually, as Liam said, these two things can almost decouple and they'll be completely separate outcomes. And yeah, let's say that it doesn't work out for the master's degree, we could just bring your MBA forward. Very occasionally with some candidates, and maybe this is a candidate who has, let's say, perhaps towards the lower end of the range with regards professional experience, that we really think that person should only undertake the MBA after they have completed that master's program. So occasionally we will set a condition of that nature. Question here about degrees and academic background. Does a master's degree GPA count with regards to the application?
So let me say yes and no to this, and I'll explain why. Yes, we'll take it into consideration here at the MBA side of things at the business school. Now, I don't want people to think that if they do not have a master's degree, then that puts them at a disadvantage. It does not. As you'll note from the application requirement slide that Charlotte shared with you, an undergraduate degree is the mandatory aspect that you need. You don't need to have a master's degree, although if you do, we will look at your GPA and take that into consideration as well. If you already have a master's degree, just again think about the strategy behind your choice of partner program. If you have a master's degree in a field that is similar to the one that you're already choosing to partner with the MBA, there might be a question from that department admissions team as to why you're looking to in some ways replicate that level of study you already have in the master's degree you've already obtained. Hopefully that answers your question.
And a question here about an undergraduate degree where this person got a 2-2. So I guess in theory they don't quite reach what we're looking for in the MBA application, and they're really just asking the question, could I still be considered? I don't know whether this person is asking just about the MBA or about the 1+1, given that this is a 1+1 webinar. And certainly my initial thought would be you're not likely to be a competitive candidate to a master's degree here at Oxford with a 2-2. But if we are just thinking about an MBA application quite separately, nothing to do with the 1+1, what would you say, Liam?
Again, it's similar to GMAT and GRE. If you do not meet that advertised minimum criteria, please do not think that you cannot apply. We look at your application as a sum of its parts rather than individually focusing on one aspect that may or may not be at the level that we say we need on the website. We're not looking just for the brightest minds. We do want those people, but we also want people that have life experience, work experience, have the right level of emotional intelligence and self-awareness to positively impact the cohort. We are aware that your undergraduate degree may be several years in your past, and you might be a different person now, and so your performance at undergraduate may not be reflective of the strengths you can bring to the class. So please don't think that you cannot apply if you fall below that criteria. And just to mirror what Charlotte was saying, some of those MSc options that you can pick, those departments are looking for very academically strong people. So if the question was around your chances in the 1+1 rather than just the MBA side of things, I would echo what Charlotte has said and say that they will look for a minimum GPA or an undergraduate level of performance as quite a concrete expectation when they admit people into those partner programs.
Got a question here about our impending stage 2 deadline, which is coming up early November. This person is sitting for the GMAT on the 2nd of November. Could they still be considered for the stage 2?
So we ask you to have a complete application before the deadline passes, and what that effectively means is that there is no component of your application missing. We will need a GMAT score from you before that deadline passes. Now, in some rare occurrences, we have had a little bit of flexibility to talk to individuals that simply cannot get that GMAT done in time. And so I would encourage that person who had that question to get in touch. We can have a conversation about his or her profile, and we can see if there's anything that we can do. But generally speaking, for the people that are listening, that deadline is a hard deadline, and there is really not much leeway either side of that at all. And don't forget, with your GMAT score, you do get a score immediately as soon as you finish a test. If you include our institution code as one of the codes that you send that to, as Charlotte mentioned at the beginning, we will get that score quite quickly. But generally speaking, again, it does have to be before the deadline is passed.
Thanks, Liam. I'm going to just mention something there because it just triggered off a thought in my mind, which is around the video assessment. Now, you probably remember from that slide that I mentioned you get access to the video assessment platform once you submit your application. Well, to echo what Liam's just said around the fact that your application needs to be complete when the deadline falls, by definition, therefore, that must include your video assessment submission. So if I was in your shoes and I was wanting to make my application, I'd make sure that I submitted at least a week before the deadline, because I would want plenty of time to practice for those video submissions before I had to do my live take. So I think that's potentially some good advice. If you submit your application well before the deadline, then you've got plenty of time to access that video assessment portal, practice, 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 go for your live take when you feel nice and confident with the system that you're using, and put yourself in a good position to know that everything is completed in place when the deadline passes. Question here with perhaps more of a careers focus. What opportunities are there for internships in either or in both of those degrees?
It's a good question. I would say during your first year, during the course date, and it could be a 9-month or a 12-month master's, there are few opportunities for internship in that first year. If you have a 9-month master's degree, you will have that middle summer that you can fill with an internship should you want to before you join the MBA. The wider university careers team can help support you in that search. You will be included in some sessions with the business school careers team, even in your first year as that 1+1 student. But the internship opportunity for the MBA comes at the end of the MBA year. So almost at the very end of your 2-year stay with us, there is an internship opportunity throughout July and August. That's a global opportunity. The careers team here at the business school will work on those internships and make sure that those chances are presenting themselves to you during your time in the 12-month MBA program. So my piece of advice here is, if you think you will take one of those internships at the end of your MBA, is engage with the careers team as early as you can. Allow them to understand geographically where you would like to go, or maybe sector, or even specific company, if you know that, so that they can ensure that that internship opportunity is available for you at the right time. So there are two chances in a 9-month MSc, that middle summer, and then everyone has that chance in the second year, at the end of that second year, at the end of the MBA.
Great, thanks. Do we have a preference, would you say, for the GRE versus the GMAT?
I would say we do not have a preference. I think we probably see more GMAT test takers than GRE, simply because traditionally it's the test that MBA students will take to gain admission into business school, wherever that may be. So I think history lends itself to the volume of GMAT test takers that we see, but the GRE is growing. It's probably still a minority in terms of how many here at Oxford take it to gain admission, but it is valued equally. And so my recommendation here would be research both of those tests, see how the slight nuances with each one maybe suits your strengths in a more strategic way, and pick the one that gives you the best chance of success. We will not favor one over the other.
Just time for a couple more questions. So we've talked a little bit about how your application needs to be complete when the deadline falls, and I think you've already alluded to things that are not necessarily within your direct control already, Liam, but what about references? What if someone has maybe one referee who can't quite hit that sort of Friday midnight deadline?
And we do get this relatively often, folks, so again, it's a very sensible question. I would say you should be aiming at all times to submit complete on time, as we've said. Now, things do get in the way. Your referee might get sick. They might be called away on other commitments. Let us know if that happens. We can often, for things like that supplementary information from your referee, we can offer a little bit of a grace period. We'll never officially advertise it on our website. We'll never say, oh, don't worry, you've got as much time as you need. But if you come to us on an individual basis and say, I think my referee might be struggling, is there anything that we can do? Then yes, there is a possibility that we can extend the deadline just for the reference, not for really anything else, maybe into the week after the deadline has passed. Please don't expect that you'll be able to do that for things like, oh, I just haven't quite got around to writing my essay yet, can I have a bit more time? Absolutely not. But things like referees, where things have happened that has blocked them being able to submit their commitment in time, we do have often some flexibility that we can offer to you, but that's on a case-by-case basis. And don't just expect it will happen if you haven't alerted us to the fact that you need it.
Great, thanks very much, Liam. I think we are pretty much out of time. So one thing I'm going to ask Liam to do now is to type our email address into the dialog box, which is oxfordmba@sbs.ox.ac.uk. Actually, let me do that for you. I'm going to pop that through to everybody who's listening, because this is the best way to get in touch with us if you have any other questions. Something might spring to mind if you review the slide deck, because you will be sent a link to all of these slides and our recording after the event. But also you might just want to take a conversation offline. There could be something that's perhaps personal or pertinent just to you. So we would ask you to just drop us a private email, and one of the recruitment and admissions team will get back to you and answer your question for you. So without further ado, all that it really remains for me to say is thanks ever so much for your attention this afternoon. I hope that was useful. I hope that's given you some food for thought, and also attempted to clarify and demystify a little bit of the application mechanism around the 1+1 and the fact that you do need to make these two separate applications, but taking you towards a common goal or aim. So thanks very much indeed, and it's a very good afternoon to you all from Oxford.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.
We'll see your applications come through very soon, we hope.
And good luck. Bye.